recording. All right.
Like we are live now. Ready?
We are live.
All right. Welcome to the February 25th, 2021 BAR Small virtual meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. The other board members present this afternoon are Glenn Gardner, Fillmore Wilson, and Bill Huey. City staff present today are the BARS Administrator, Kim Lavin, and Preservation Planner, Linda Bennett. And the new city architect, Tori Parrish, is here with us. The order of the meeting today will be as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview of the project by a member of city staff for the benefit of the board and the public. That will be followed by an applicant presentation. This will be limited to 10 minutes. And I would ask that any presenters during this time, please clearly state your name first and last for the record. Any persons affiliated with the project, we ask that you speak during this time as well. This would include any owners, developers, architects, designers, etc. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time, but by custom, the board typically asks questions on the heels of the applicant's presentation. After that, we'll hear from the public. If you are speaking, again, please state your name first and last for the record. From there, we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations. And after that, the applicant will have the opportunity to clarify or respond to anything raised by city staff or the public. This will be limited to 5 minutes, and we ask that you please respond to a specific question or clarify a specific point raised. This is not the opportunity to reopen your presentation. Once we hear any applicant response, we will then close discussion and move on to board discussion and a vote. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred. Agenda item number 1, 309 King, agenda item 6, 42 Charlotte, and agenda item 8, 225 King Street. I ask that please limit any comments to architecture only. That is the purview of this board. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, anything like that, they are not within the purview of this board, and we will not hear them. Now I will move to Kim. She's got some virtual meeting protocol that she'll go through. Kim, you're on mute.
Thank you, Lindsay. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board or staff, will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. For public comment, the applicants, all team members, and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you've registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Members of the public that speak are encouraged to remain in the meeting for the completion of the item that they have commented on. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. For the board members will be polled by the chair for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay, in favor, or nay, not in favor. The chairman shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chairman if he or she has not read the motion accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they'll call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on the Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. And the results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. Finally, these recordings are being recorded. Excuse me, these proceedings are being recorded.
Thanks, Kim. Agenda item number 1 has been withdrawn for staff review. So agenda item number 2, 7 Limehouse Street.
7 Limehouse Street is requesting conceptual approval for the construction of brick columns and pedestrian gate, including gas lanterns. The house is a category 3 and it's in the Charlestown neighborhood. It was built in 1830 and in the old and historic district. There's a little context for you to familiarize yourself with the property just south of Trad Street on the west side of the street. Here is an image of the front of the house. You can see the gate area in question on the left. This is looking north and south. And from here, I will turn it over to Mr. Calhoun. You can find him. Thank you. Mr. Calhoun, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My house is about 200 years old. It's a brick home. And I had some good fortune, and that's why I'm talking to you today. My office is at 23 Broad Street, which was built in 1783. And this old building has a courtyard in the back, and years ago the garden gate was taken off the hinges and put into storage. It's a wrought iron gate that was built in 1783 when this home was built, and I've had it restored, and I would like to hang it in front of my house. Is really how this whole project got initiated. Even though my house is about 200 years old, this is going to enhance the historical integrity of my house. And if it wouldn't do that, then I wouldn't be doing this, because I love the fact that my house is old and original, and I take very good care of it. Nothing about this project will look like it's not original to my 200-year-old home, because all the materials I'm using are as old as the house or older than the house, which would be the gate itself. So I'm going to use the old Brickyard Plantation bricks. I'm going to build the columns. Will look essentially like thank you, Kim. They'll look like the columns I have on an interior garden gate on my property. It'll be the same old design I'm going to use. And this is the right hand gate, and of course the left hand gate looks exactly like it. But this is when I first got the gates. And since then they've been sandblasted and had several coats of paint put on them. They look a whole lot better now. This is the existing gate. Please stay here, Kim, so I can describe what I'm going to do. So the columns will go. This gate will be removed in the middle. You can see I have a little, looks like a concrete 15-inch curtain wall at the bottom and wrought iron fencing that matches this gate. There'll be about 6 inches on either side of the columns that I'll have a blacksmith and of course my brick mason will duplicate this concrete curtain wall at the bottom, so they will both tie into the columns. He'll use the wrought iron from the gate itself to cover those 6 inches on either side of the columns. So the existing fence and concrete curtain wall at the bottom will all tie in completely into the brick columns, including the gas lanterns. They'll be 8 feet tall, which is what zoning requires. Just the brick columns themselves will be 76 inches high, and then the gas lanterns add an additional 20 inches on either side. The blacksmith's work is going to tie in, like I just stated, the the wrought iron fencing on either side into the columns, and then he will actually hang the gate itself. On top of the gate, I will have gas copper lanterns that Carolina Lanterns is going to install for me if you approve this. And it's going to be very attractive. And when you walk by, there will be nothing about the construction whatsoever that will make you think it's not original to the original home. Because like I said, all the materials will be as old or older than the house. And that's all that I want to do, is basically enhance the historical character of my home and put a much more attractive looking column, wrought iron gate, and gas lanterns, replacing the gate the gate that you're looking at right now. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun. Do we have any questions from board members?
Sorry, Bill, go ahead.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Or sorry, Fillmore. I just had a few questions with regard to dimensions of the gates. If we could go back to or remain on that, I'm just going to write this down really quickly.
Okay.
Okay, I think so. I really just,
Glenn, while you're doing that, I wanted to add that the brickwork would be done by Robert Johnson. The wrought iron work, the blacksmith, would be Adam Gilbert. Both of these gentlemen have done work for me before. Even I'm not a contractor, obviously, but they have done work for me before, and they do excellent work. And then the gas lanterns would be hung by Carolina Lanterns.
okay. Thank you. I really more needed a clarification, I guess, than a question on those dimensions.
Okay.
Fillmore Wilson here. I just had a question. The existing pair of gates and the knee walls and the iron fence, do you know approximately when they were added to the house?
I do not.
Okay.
I have no idea when they were added to the house. I wish I did.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board right now? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim? Kim, you're on mute.
We don't have anyone speaking. I believe we have a letter.
Kim, I can read that out if you want me to read that?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Lindsay? Thank you.
The letter from the Preservation Society of Charleston, their position statement to the Board of Architectural Review Small for our February 25th, 2021 meeting for 7 Limehouse Street. Dear board members, generally the Preservation Society of Charleston is not opposed to the proposal to replace the current non-historic driveway gate with a more period appropriate design and configuration. They're also encouraged by the idea to reuse the salvage gate from Broad Street. However, we are concerned the salvage gate would not be appropriate for this location as it is incompatible with the design of the existing iron fencing and pedestrian gate along the front of the property. We would encourage the applicant to consider alternative locations for the salvage gate, perhaps the pedestrian gate location set back from the driveway, and pursue a more cohesive design approach to the front ironwork. Thank you for considering our position in this matter. Sincerely, Erin Minigan, Director of Historic Preservation. I believe that's the only letter that we have. We'll move to city staff comments and recommendations. Kim?
Thank you. Although the gate is a wonderful historic artifact, the proposed location for the driveway is inappropriate. We would request retaining the wider gate and finding an alternate location for this pedestrian gate. The columns appear overbearing for the delicate and narrow gates. Brick columns would be more appropriate for a wider gate. Thinner iron posts would be appropriate for this gate, similar to what currently exists. The existing driveway gate matches the existing pedestrian gate. Replacing the driveway gates for an additional pedestrian gate in a different style seems erroneous. The coping wall details of what are proposed for the rest of the length and fence are not addressed, but Mr. Calhoun did explain that thoroughly, so thank you for that. But lastly, the BAR policy statements guide design. An excerpt from Charleston Standards Policy Statement number 2 states the buildings of Charleston provide a physical record of their time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or elements from other historic properties, obscure that record and are not encouraged. So the staff's recommending denial for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Calhoun, did you want to clarify anything or respond to any of the comments from Preservation Society or city staff?
Yes, can you hear me, Kim?
Yes, we can
Yes,
hear you.
Okay. Yes, I would. It's not, number one, it's not a driveway. It's never been a driveway, and zoning has addressed that issue, and zoning has no problem with this gate being issued because you cannot drive a car through the existing gate. So I'm not covering up a driveway. I don't really understand the position that I just heard, what says the gate does not match the existing gate. It's actually, or the existing fencing. I'm not aware of guarding gates matching the existing fencing. In fact, there's a renovation that was done 2 blocks from me at 135 Trad Street. That's 135 Trad Street, where they put a wrought iron fence up and they hung it from brick columns. The brick used is contemporary brick. It looks contemporary. And the wrought iron, it's not wrought iron fencing, it's cast iron fencing. It looks like it was purchased at Home Depot. So, everything I'm doing on this project enhances the historical character of Limehouse Street and my home, which is the oldest house on Limehouse Street. Robert Limehouse built it originally when he owned his farm. So I don't watch many of these hearings, but I would be surprised if you had many folks who came on here that had an original Charleston wrought iron gate that's 240 years old and had an opportunity to hang that gate in front of their 200-year-old house. It can't happen very often. So I feel fortunate in that regard, and I think it would be a shame to not approve this when cheap looking, and I'm sorry, they are cheap looking cast iron gates are being hung and approved by the bar, apparently, I don't know. And by the Historic Preservation Society. I mean, they obviously rubber stamping these projects, and they're all around my house. So I'm different than those projects where I'm using antique materials. And the focus of what I'm doing, which is putting columns up and hanging a wrought iron garden gate, it is absolutely every bit as old as my house and would definitely enhance the appearance of Limehouse Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Calhoun. We will now move into board discussion and a vote. Who wants to start us off with some board discussion?
Yeah, this is Bill. I'll go ahead and start. I think really maybe more of an issue for me is the potentially the brick piers, kind of the size and mass of the brick piers in conjunction with the diminutive curb wall that's there now and the weight of the ironwork that will remain flanking. I believe that the comment from staff about more appropriately potentially hanging gates of this size from maybe iron posts or supports is something that may change the effect of the presentation. I would say that I might be more apt to entertain looking at it if that were the case. I think what's distracting me mainly is the visual weight, height, and everything of these brick piers.
I'm happy to go next. I certainly commend the applicant for wishing to use the gates. They're of great quality, as I can tell by the photograph. And I think I'm a little stuck because I understand the position of the city. I understand the position of Preservation Society, and you don't want to create false context. At the same time, you know, the reality is those gates could end up on eBay and leave for California, and that would be a shame. And so that makes me really hope that we could find a creative solution so that Mr. Calhoun could use the gates. And I guess my comment about the location, I understand what he is wanting to do. I'm just seeing a little bit of competition visually with the existing column to the south on the, I think that's the Shingler House, if I'm not mistaken, to the south. I almost feel like these gates are a little too delicate, may not be the perfect word, but I think they are a little delicate for the columns that are proposed. And even though those columns are, I think they're 19 inches wide as proposed, which is really, if he's using like Old English brick, which I think was the intention, you know, you'd probably almost be at just a 2 brick width. So not a gigantic column, but I do think it may be in competition with what's to the south of it. And then I think my only other point to that is I've kind of looked back at some photos, and I would almost rather see these gates be used at the front entry to the house, just as a matter of hierarchy, with the consideration of modifying the coping wall and the fencing and the gate leading to the front door. And I know that's not the application on, you know, in front of us, but I would love to conceptually agree that they could go here, and then allow the applicant to work through some details and some other ideas to find the appropriate detailing so that they could be put to use.
Fillmore Wilson, I'm generally in agreement with what Glenn and Bill have stated. I certainly applaud the desire to put these historic gates back into service. My concern, I think, is, like Bill stated, was I think that the columns are somewhat overbearing for the gates. And as Glenn stated, my first reaction was I thought that those columns would begin to compete with the column to the south. And I certainly would support another location perhaps, or revision of the way the gates are currently intended to be installed.
Thanks, Fillmore. This is Lindsay. I also agree with Glenn's thought to give conceptual approval to the location, just and to restudy those brick columns on the side, whether they be brick or some other material. I do like the idea of reusing those gates, and another location on the property may be more appropriate, but I could give conceptual approval to the location here, but not to the columns.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, I mean, hearing everyone else, and I mean, it sounds like we're all kind of a similar mindset. I want to be careful not to discourage the applicant. So as opposed to the denial that staff has recommended, I think that the easiest or the cleanest thing to do would actually be to make a motion for a deferral with encouragement to restudy location and detailing for reuse of these gates at 7 Limehouse.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for deferral with encouragement to restudy the location and the location of the fencing and the detail of the columns. Is that right?
Correct.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I will now put it to a vote. Bill,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Next agenda item is number 3, 56 Cannon Street. Kim?
Thank you, Lindsay. 56 Cannon Street is requesting conceptual approval for new construction of 2 single-family houses in the rear and a masonry wall at the front. The main house is category 4 in the Cannonboro, Elliottboro neighborhood and was constructed in 1865 and is in the Old City District.
Have a good evening.
There's an aerial for just a familiarity with the property on the north side of the street,
Out the window. Might be a big hole
and
there.
some existing site photos.
Sorry to interrupt you, Kim. Is there, Mr. Calhoun, could you mute yourself, or Kim, is there a way to
I'm
take
sorry about that.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
And this is across the street from the site. And this is looking east on Cannon and looking west. This is a survey card from 1985, which has a great photo of the front. And the card describes the main house there. And some sandboard maps from 1888 and 1902. Property remains unchanged. And the previous motion from February 11th was denial for height and massing with staff comments noted, and the approval of a wall with board comment to consider toning down the high style of the ironwork. And if Mr. Gould wants to take it from here. You have the floor whenever you're ready.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Andrew Gould. So you looked at this just 2 weeks ago, so I expect you'll remember it fairly well. I had proposed the 2 houses in the back that were 3 stories with a gambrel roof, and the board ruled that that was too tall, and that they should be 2-story buildings, is my understanding. So we can go through these fairly quickly, Kim, if you want to scroll through these site photos. And that's the backyard where the 2 new houses will go. So, okay, stop at the site plan there if you would. So the site plan is pretty much unchanged from the last application. It's two new footprints in the back. The board had indicated they were fine with this site plan. And if you go on to the next one, so here you can see the change between previous and current. Previously, they were both 3-story houses, and I have changed them to 2-story houses with a hipped roof, classic Charleston hipped roof with the slight bell curve. And the building is overall significantly shorter than they were before. If you go to the next slide, here you can see the street elevation. So if you look at the current version, the eave height is now substantially lower than the eave height of the existing building, as is the roof peak height. And go on to the next one. So this is the middle building, which again is reduced substantially in height. And go on to the next one. And a detailed elevation of the current proposal. I've tried to keep in as much of the interesting detailing that I had previously, because the board had commended this as appealing detailing. So it's still got the same beautiful porch details and the same nice big frieze up at the eave line. It'll still be quite an elegant house. And go on to the next one. So this is the rear building, exactly the same changes to this building, and go on. So here's a detailed view, and again, only the left end of this building is visible at the end of the driveway, so it's got the small porch there. And go on. And the floor plan, this is a new floor plan where it's got 1-bedroom suite on the ground floor, and then it's got 2-bedroom suites upstairs with a nice generous master. The previous proposal was, of course, 4-bedroom houses, so now as 3-bedroom houses, it still fits within this reduced envelope of the building reasonably well. Go on. And same floor plan, just a mirror image on the rear house, and go on. So here you can see a building section. I've got 9-foot ceilings on each floor. And again, there's no third story at all. It's really just an attic with this proposal. And go on. And the wall section, you can see the very nice classical detailing with a big cove molding on the eaves, and a very elegant custom handrail profile. Go on. Same details as before here. And then let's go on and see the renderings. So this was I have a previous and a current. If you go back, there's the previous with the gambrel roofs and the dormers being quite prominent in the view down the driveway. And if you go on to the current view, you can see that the houses read much more diminutive now. The thing about these bell curved hipped roofs is they look fairly substantial in an elevation drawing. They look much less substantial in real life when you're looking up at the building at an angle. So this gives you a more accurate impression of how that roof would read. And I think this is pretty successful at making the houses look definitively subordinate to the existing house. If you go on to the next one, so there again was the previous and then the current view. There you have it. And I think that's all I have there.
Thank you, Andrew. Do we have any questions of the board at this time?
This is Bill. Just one question. Andrew, the roofing material you're proposing?
Yeah, I'm still proposing that would be a hand crimped standing seam roof. I know that's a bit of a expensive roofing material, and not one that we very often see on new backyard houses, but it is with this roof form, with the bell curved hipped roof, it's really the only roofing material that looks right on this. It's such a classic Charleston roof form, and one really wants to see the the hand crimped hemmed seam up the ridge line. It looks terrible to see a modern metal material with a ridge cap on a roof like that. So yeah, this would be a good handmade metal roof.
Thank you. And then the siding, just general question about siding. What material is that?
Well, it would be the typical lap siding with a 6-inch reveal. I'm indicating on the plans that it could be either wood or an artisan hardy product.
Okay, great. And I've learned today Hardy's about to discontinue artisan. So
well, there's other manufacturers that make similar products.
great. Thank you.
Any other board comments at this time? Board questions? All right, we will move on to public comment. Kim, I'm not seeing any letters. Do we have anyone speaking?
We do not.
All right, we will move on to city staff comment and recommendation.
Thank you. The scale and massing of the proposal is much improved and we appreciate the restudy. The proposed rear buildings are subordinate and respectful to the main historic building. We would only request that you restudy the window proportions to be more vertical, if permissible, for egress as required by BAR principles. So staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Andrew, did you want to clarify anything with respect to the staff comments?
Yeah, well, with regards to the windows, because the building is overall shorter now, I have made the windows themselves shorter than in the previous proposal. And that does actually require that I make them wider to still meet egress. These are code minimum for egress. And so I played around with that a good deal, and I just did find that the 6/6 window that meets egress just looks a little bit too tall for the floor-to-floor heights I have here. And they also looked a little too vertical for the very horizontal proportion that this design now has. So that's why I switched out the 6/6s for 8/8s with this change to the building massing. I think the 8/8s they fill out the rhythm of the facade pretty nicely because the windows are spaced a little bit on the wide side. And you can see on the end facades of the building, I still have 6/6s, but those actually do not meet egress. They are too small, which is fine because each bedroom also has an 8/8 window. So anyway, my study was that this seemed to work out with the most attractive balance. And I know 8/8s are a little unusual, but I personally am fond of them. I use them on my own house, and they give a rather pleasing character to the building, something that you don't see every day.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll now move into board discussion. Kim, can we flip back to the previous? Okay.
You want to see this site section or?
No, this is just what I'd wanted to see, just the difference between the windows to get a visual. Thank you.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and start. I appreciate all the efforts that you've made. I think you've done a successful job in accomplishing what I know that the board was looking for before. And I understand the issue of the window proportions, and I really don't have a problem with what is being proposed. So again, I appreciate the effort, and I would support approval.
I am Glenn Gardner. I'm in the same boat with Bill. At first, when I first read the staff comments about the windows, I was in agreement. But the more I have looked at it, and after hearing Mr. Gould talk about the proposed quality of materials, I actually think those windows may lend themselves to feeling a little more custom. And I commend the updated drawings. This is much more appropriate than what we were given previously.
More Wilson, I agree with my fellow board members, and I likewise appreciate the effort made here. I think this is works much better, and the windows, I certainly kind of like the 6/6 better. I understand the obviously the code issues, and these are fairly traditional looking buildings, and I don't think it hurts to call out some difference. That this is the windows certainly help indicate that these are more contemporary buildings. So I don't think I have an issue with the windows.
Thank you, Fillmore. This is Lindsay, and my comment is again only with the windows. I'd wanted to see the visual, just based on Andrew's comments, that this sort of, it changed from well, let me find my words here. It changed from a more vertically oriented building to horizontally oriented, and the windows on the current plans just seem to match with that more horizontal orientation. So I'm okay with the windows. Do we have a motion here? It sounds like we're all on the same page.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll go ahead and make a motion for conceptual approval of final details of staff.
Okay, we have a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Glenn, was that you?
Yep.
All right, we'll put it to a vote. Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, 16 Queen Street.
Bear with me for just 1 minute. Okay, 16 Queen Street is requesting conceptual approval for the new construction of a rear addition. The building is a category 3. It's in the French Quarter, constructed in 1796, and it's in the Old and Historic District. And I apologize, but we ran out of time for our context slides, so I'm just going to fly Google in here. We are going to show you where the building's located. It's right here. And it's just, of course, Google has a blurry spot right here. But you can see here's the existing building. And looking west, turning around, and looking east. And if Becky would like to take it from here, Becky, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Kim. Can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Okay, great. I'm Becky Fenno. I'm presenting the addition at 16 Queen Street. As Kim mentioned, you can see our building in the aerial. We're pointing to that with the blue arrow, and we are adjoining the building at 18 Queen Street. Next slide, please. This is our building at 16 Queen. And at the top is the street elevation. On the bottom left, what we're discussing today is actually the addition at the rear of the structure. And at the bottom left are the gates to a parking area at the ground floor. And then just to the right of that, we've stepped inside and we're looking toward the rear of the property. And the addition will be at the rear of the property, located to the left behind the existing structure. And on the bottom right is the rear elevation of the property. And there are a couple of things here. You can see the screen porch and the one-story addition and the metal stair that are not historic, that have been approved to be removed. And the metal stair is giving access to a second unit of the building. The building is currently a duplex with a unit on the first floor and a unit on the second and third floors. So we will be converting this back to a single residence and restoring the front historic part of the building. And then we are requesting the construction of the addition at the rear. And you can also see here the wall of 18 Queen Street on the right, the 2- and 3-story walls of that structure. So we actually had a wonderful site visit yesterday with the owners, Brent and Sandra Smith, and reviewed all parts of our project with them. And I think we're all very excited about the collaboration of the restoration of our structure and giving them the ability to actually restore this wall from the 16 Queen side. Next slide, please. These are the Sanborn maps, 1884 and 1888. You can see rear accessory buildings and a 2-story attached structure on the property. In 1902, the 2-story attached structure is still there while the outbuildings have been removed. And then by 1944, the added 2-story structure has been removed. And then at some point in the 1970s, that CMU structure, 1-story addition and the screen porch was added. Next slide, please. This, the top left is our neighbor at 18 Queen. They've done a beautiful restoration of the structure, and they have a garage and some additions that you can see a little bit there. And these are just a couple additions that have been done nearby on Queen Street. Next slide, please. This is the visibility of our addition. So on the left is the existing, and really we're focusing on looking through that parking area at the bottom right, and the right is our proposal. We have been approved for shutters at the rear end of the parking area to provide privacy for the owner for that beautiful garden that's at the rear of the structure. So really there is a kind of a space between the top of those shutters and the underside of the piazza where the addition will be visible. Next slide, please. This is the site plan. At the top is the existing. Starting from the left is Queen Street and the historic building, which will be restored. And at the bottom of the plan is the parking area and a brick wall that's on the property line of 14 Queen. As you go to the right, there is it looks like a hyphen, but it's actually enclosed space under the piazza. That part of the piazza was enclosed at the first and second floors and is historic. So all of that material will be restored and left untouched. And then at the right is the hatched area of what we will be removing: the metal stair, the CMU block building, and the screen porch. And at the top of the screen is 18 Queen is in that gray hatch so that you can see how we share that party wall with them. At the bottom is our proposal, again, to preserve and restore all the historic parts of the building. And then the hatched area is our proposal. And we are proposing actually to extend with the delineation and material, the hyphen. And this will not be visible from the street. The hyphen won't be. But we want that lower hyphen because that allows us to pull the 1-story building away from the historic building, and the roof will not crash or touch or crash into the existing historic building. And the length of the building, we've held it 2 feet back from the length of the structure at 18 Queen Street at the far right, which would be the north. And then at the bottom of the screen, the east wall of the addition is set just over 6 inches setback from the wall of the existing structure. Next slide, please. This is an enlargement of that plan. So again, looking at the restoration of the front building. At the bottom, we can look at the proposal. So the metal stair is no longer needed, of course. So we'll be restoring the interior stair to the upper levels. And then we will be extending that hyphen again so that we can pull away that room that will open up onto the garden at the rear of the property. And you can see again the setback from the line of the existing building and from the very end of 18 Queen Street. Next slide. This is the second floor. Again, the front building, there's no change to that, with the exception of when we remove the metal stair, we will restore that part of the piazza that's been carved out. And then you can see we'll see this in elevation in just a minute, but there's a lower roof to create a little separation between the existing building and the 1-story higher part of the addition. Next slide, please. This is the third floor and there's no change to that. Next slide. This is the street elevation, and as when seen straight ahead in elevation, the addition is not visible. Next slide. This is the east elevation, and actually this is only the way you would see it if you were on the walkway at 14 Queen Street. And we'll do a section in just a minute so you can see the full elevation. But again, you can see starting at the left, the main building and the piazza. I apologize, something happened to those third floor, the graphic on those third floor windows. There's no change to any part of the historic building there. And then you can see on the top, you see a couple things, the metal stair, the CMU block addition, and the screen porch that we'll be removing. There's a tall metal flue that we'll be removing as well. And you can see the wall of 18 Queen Street that our addition will basically be framed against. So at the bottom is our proposal where we have the existing house on the left. We have the lower hyphen that you can see there, which allows us to separate the higher roof of the large room of the addition. And we're proposing tongue and groove wood siding with large windows, sort of as if it was either kind of a carriage house or a garden structure at the rear of the property. Next slide, please. This is the north elevation. And so you can see again the existing structures at the top, and then at the bottom, our proposal, how that the height of our 1-story addition relates to the existing building and to the site. And we're proposing large glass doors and transoms opening onto the rear garden. And this elevation is not visible. We're proposing a very simple roof structure to allow water to shed, obviously in the most straightforward way, away from 18 Queen Street. There was a proposal in about 2017 for a much larger 2-story addition that was a little bit more complicated. We're not referencing that because I think our proposal is much simpler than that earlier one was. Next slide.
Now you've got about a minute left, just to let you know.
Thank you. This is just the last slide. I wanted you to be able to see just the full elevation with the existing structure cutting through the parking area. And then you can see the addition at the rear with windows with lower solid panels. And again, 18 Queen behind. And I just wanted to note that we do have the support from 18 Queen Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bonneau. Do we have any questions of the board?
And this is Bill, just one question. So Becky, are you flashing into the wall of 18 Queen? Is that what you're proposing there?
So that's an excellent question, Bill. I think there's a lot of nuance to doing that. My original instinct, but we'll study it further, is there's probably going to be a reglet going into their wall. And that's something that we'll be discussing and be very, very careful with and work with them on.
Perhaps maybe finding a mortar joint to set that reglet into place. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. We'll move on to public comment. I've got one letter that I'll read. This is from the neighbors at 18 Queen Street. Good morning, Kim. My name is Brent Smith, and my wife Sandra and I own and reside at 18 Queen Street. Yesterday, we met with Fred Stone and his team, including Becky Fenno, and walked through his property at 16 Queen Street. We reviewed and discussed the planned renovation of the property there. We understand there is a review process underway with your office for the planned renovation. I'm writing to let you know that we have no objections to the plans we have seen and are supportive of this work as adjoining neighbors. Please feel free to contact us if you need anything. Best regards, Brent Smith. Kim, did we have any other, anyone speaking?
No, no more public comment.
Okay, we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations. Kim?
Thank you. The concept of the addition is appropriate. The details and style are differentiated, and the historic portions of the house are delineated sensitively. Our only request is that the view corridor is restudied under the piazza to balance the new wall and the roof line further to relate to the piazza. That moment is critical to the success of the design. So staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Fenno, did you have any response or clarification to anything that the city staff?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. We will move on to board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill. Just one very quick question. Kim, can you elaborate on your second comment, please?
Yeah, the most visibility will be seen through this. I'm going to zoom in on it so you can see it better. Through this little section, we are discounting this shutter system as it's, it's pretty much temporary. It's not part of the historic building, and it's just had approval to be installed. So this is the most visible portion that the public will see. And we were thinking that either the wall could move in a little bit or the roof line could be cinched in, somehow kind of creating a better balance between the existing historic building and the new addition. While we don't want to, go completely traditional, and we appreciate the kind of contemporary design that Ms. Fenno has shown us. It kind of borders, she called it transitionary design. So I think either moving in the contemporary direction or fully engaging the traditional for that little view corridor is important. Does that answer your question, Bill?
I think so. Thank you. I guess since I was talking, I can to some degree see that point. I believe it as long as Becky's clear with that directive, I believe that definitely holds merit. I guess really my only comment would be, again, just to make sure, and I appreciate the efforts to involve the neighbors and to meet with the neighbors, and that's should be applauded always. Just to make sure if there is a condition of a reglet, which I do believe, to your point, Becky, is going to be required, that if there is any, cutting or setting of a reglet into that neighboring wall, that be done, hopefully within a mortar joint rather than cutting brick or any masonry or whatever's involved over there. Other than that, I agree with staff's recommendation.
Fillmore Wilson here. I am in agreement with staff and Bill. for conceptual approval.
I concur as well.
Sounds like we have some agreement. Do we have a motion?
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and I'll make a motion for a conceptual approval with staff's comments and an additional board comment that any installation of a reglet required for the proposed shed roof be installed within a mortar joint rather than cutting into brick of the neighboring wall, and final review by staff.
Okay, we have a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments and a board comment that with respect to that reglet, which we think will be required, we would prefer. Kim, did you get all that? Instead of cutting into the wall, we would prefer a master joint.
Yeah, instead of cutting into, because with the reglet, you can just cut the brick itself and tuck a reglet, to cut into a actual joint, a mortar joint, rather than cutting the brick on the wall.
Okay, you've got the lay member here, so thank you, Phil.
Got it.
Okay. And with final review by staff, do we have a second?
Glenn Gardner, second.
We'll now put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to agenda item 523 Reed Street.
Just bear with me for one moment. Okay. Item number 5 is 23 Reed Street, requesting conceptual approval for new construction of single-family residence. It's in the East Side neighborhood and in the Old City District. Here's an aerial view of the property on the south side of Reed Street between America and Drake, and some existing site photos. On the left is new construction completed in 2019. And this is looking west on Reed and looking east. Here's a Sanborn map from 1902 to 1942. The previous motion, January 28th meeting, was denial for height scale and mass and general architectural direction per staff comments and board comment to restudy the false sense of addition. If you'd like me to revisit these staff comments, I will. But if not, I will turn it over to the applicant, Clay Shackelford and Don Lindbergh. You guys have the floor whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Clay Shackelford. I'm the architect. If you could advance to the site plan. So the primary change from the previous submittal to this submittal on the site plan is to have the garage entrance from the rear, which did require us to tuck the fireplace chimney into the house, and also reorder the rear porch so that we could remove the columns at the ground level. And you'll see that in the elevations. So if you go to the next. Again, there were few changes to the floor plan other than respacing of columns and reorganizing the stair a bit to get the head height to work up to the attic level. So if you could advance. Again, this slide just shows some of the materials of cementitious stucco, brick at the base, standing seam metal roof, historically accurate columns and sort of the louver detail in an arched form in the other image. So if you could advance. So the major changes to the elevation or elevations are we brought the finished floor down to the design flood elevation. We also removed the requested additional height on the main level. So we brought that back down to 12 feet floor to floor, and which brought the house down somewhat, but then to kind of address the width to height, we did bring the full masonry wall across the entire facade. So the two windows on the left of the front elevation, those would be windows that are into the porch. And then to address to try to make the rear portion of the house seem like it's more of a piece of this house, if you would go to the next one. So it is now coming off of the parapet walls at the two gables. And you can also see in this that the columns were respaced to kind of be equal between gable to gable. The other change on this is the arches at the base of the building to kind of mimic what we're doing on the front facade, where we have the arch at the entry door as well as the louver vents. And then we would also do the first two that are arches that are part of the stair would have that same detail as the front. So if you get advanced to the next. And one of the other changes is Kim, if you don't mind, could you go back to the front elevation? Sorry, that's it. We also kept the coins as well as the keystones. These are two elements that the owner really appreciates and wanted in her home, since this will be an owner occupied dwelling. Just to let you know that is why we are keeping those. I did try to tone them down because other than where they are brick to coin, they're not going to be a different value. So they're really just going to, there will be a change in plane, but it'll be the same color as the stucco. So that's all that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Shackelford. Do the board members have any questions?
This is Dawn Lindberg. I wanted just to speak on the house as the homeowner.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. Lindberg.
Oh, thank you. And just out of curiosity, I just wanted to know how many of you, have any of you live in a house built in 1835 or earlier? Just raise your hands. No, none of them. You got one. Okay. So I also own 13 Elizabeth Street, and this is the house is built in 1830, and I love the house. Absolutely love it. But as you know, it's a 9/9. It's your standard wood frame, beautiful house. But for those of you who know, and I've owned and lived in them for 20 years, the maintenance on the houses is really expensive. And every time I'm changing, every year I'm changing, I get leaks, repair them, get leaks. So some of the reasons why I'm interested in changing from that house on Elizabeth Street to a brick and stucco house is because it's, there's so many architectural, there are so many other architectural examples in it, but it's just trying to upgrade and having to be able to not have to worry about maintenance from the brick and mortar. Other examples in my neighborhood on Elizabeth Street are 14 Elizabeth Street, and maybe I should submit those to another, hopefully we can get conceptual approval. But other houses in the area are 14 Elizabeth Street, 23 Wentworth Street, and 166 Wentworth Street. 54 Hassel Street and 53 Elizabeth Street, which are all stucco, have some sort of coins and keys and, you know, have that traditional element. The only thing that I would say we are adding into this house is just, you know, some parking underneath the house. And when I bought this property on 23 Reed Street, it came with a pre-approved duplex. So I have scrapped that because you know, the neighborhood is now safe enough. I have an 11-year-old daughter and, you know, I'm not a big developer. I'm a single mom raising my 11-year-old daughter, and now the neighborhood is safe enough for us to live in our dream home. So that's kind of all I have got. So, thank you.
Now I'll open it back up to any board questions at this time, to anything we heard from Mr. Shackelford or Ms. Lindberg.
I don't think we have a wall section, do we, in the drawings? It's kind of a question for Kim. I may have missed it.
No, there's,
Okay, then my question is, the house is stucco. The finish is stucco.
that's correct. It'll be stucco over block.
Okay, so it's block construction and
Yes.
stucco over block, and the coins as presented here are stucco. Correct.
That's correct.
I just wanted to make sure. It's really hard sometimes to see the details on here on my screen and to read all the notes. And I just wanted to make sure I was not making a mistake. Thank you.
Fillmore, just a follow up on your question right there. Am I seeing that right on that front elevation? There's actually proposed brick at the ground level, and then it transitions to stucco. Can you zoom in on that? Or
Looks like to me, yeah.
Yeah, that is the proposal, yes.
Any other board questions? Okay, let's move on to public comment. I have two letters that I will read. The first is from the Preservation Society of Charleston. With respect to 23 Reed Street, dear board members, while the Preservation Society appreciates improvements made since the previous review, we do not feel adequate resetting has occurred, given the initial proposal was denied for general architectural direction in addition to height, scale, and mass. We continue to feel the architecture employs overly traditional details for new construction and should be restudied to better relate to the neighborhood character and read of its time. Specifically, many of the details proposed, including the 6/6 windows, intricate fan lights, exaggerated keystones, coins, and bishop's caps, are too traditional and high style for new construction in this particular context. We also feel the board's comments regarding the rear addition, appearing as a later addition to a historic building, have not been addressed, and modification to the chimney and large blank facade on the lower portion of the east elevation are not successful. We feel these issues with architectural direction should be resolved before this project moves forward. Thank you for considering our position in this matter. Sincerely, Erin Minigan, Director of Historic Preservation. And we also have a position statement from Historic Charleston Foundation.
We have April Wood here.
Oh, okay.
April, would you like to speak, April?
Yeah, I'll say, this is April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for conceptual approval for new construction. The single family residence, we appreciate that the applicant has responded to the majority of our comments from the last meeting, especially with regard to the front elevation. We have a few additional tweaks before we are ready to support the project moving forward. On the front elevation, we recommend the applicant restudy the fixed louvered opening on the ground floor. This area can be more successful and pedestrian friendly with two smaller openings aligned with the windows above. We also suggest removing the coins on the ground floor so that the base of the building can be more clearly defined. Lastly, we appreciate that the prominent chimney has been moved into the mass of the building. This greatly improves the appearance of the proposed building overall. The mass of the building can be further improved if this portion is pulled inward an additional 1 foot 10 inches to be aligned with the width of the piazza screen. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, do we have anyone else from the public speaking?
That's all we have today.
Move on to city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you. The project was denied for height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction, and these issues haven't been adequately addressed. The height has only come down slightly, a foot or so. Adjust floor-to-floor heights to reduce total height. Adjust the scale with fenestration size. The windows are too large on the front. They shouldn't be any taller than the door headers on the piazza side. Align the fenestration with columns. Architectural direction requires further study. Eliminate the coins and other high-style elements that are out of context or character in the neighborhood. The massing of the rear addition doesn't adequately address the board comment to restudy the false sense of addition. Further narrow and shift south to disengage the roof edge completely. The west elevation is much improved. Recess the secondary massing behind the main roof gable to mitigate the wall expanse. This will also recess the rail of the roof deck behind and under the gable so it's imperceptible. It doesn't awkwardly protrude or intersect the gable. The aggregate of the dormer windows cannot exceed 30% of the roof on which they sit, so we will double check the math on that. If the foundation of the front facade is brick clad, then the entire foundation should be as well. Determine and further study how the brick meets the stucco. And lastly, remove large louvered panel system in favor of 2 windows, closed shutters, or niches. Staff's recommending denial with staff comments noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Shackelford or Ms. Lindberg, did you have any response or clarification?
Not at this time.
Okay. We'll move on to board discussion and a vote at this point. Who would like to begin?
More Wilson, I'll jump in. I generally agree with staff comments. I think that the building does read, particularly with the elements of the coins and the porch railings as rendered, reads substantially high style for this neighborhood. Though it's definitely improved over the previous submittal. The addition, I can't see it here, on the elevation on the east side, the addition, for lack of a better term, on the east side, I think there's a staff comment related to that. I agree that should be disengaged from the roof of the main house somehow and pulled, perhaps pulled in, so that it's even though it is much improved over the previous. So in general, I am in agreement with staff on this, and without going staff comment by comment, I think I'm generally in agreement with staff's comments.
I'll go next. Glenn Gardner. I think the house, the design is definitely improved. And it's hard, I think, to discourage someone from giving something a lot of detail. But I think I want to be clear here that while I do think this house needs some more simplification, I don't want simplification to be misunderstood as necessarily lowering quality or a dumbing down. I think when we start to look at things like kind of like April Wood mentioned about the coins, I think the coins don't necessarily need to go all the way to the ground. I think you could have a much more simple ground level base and then begin the coins at the first floor. You could perhaps decrease the reveal on the coins so that they don't read as prominently, but you still have some reveal there. The railings, I mean, there are things that to me can operate within the form of the house that is being submitted. And in my mind, granted as only one board member, but in my mind, I think you could get there with the height, scale, and the mass of what is being presented today, with a revision to refinement and detailing. So I'm curious what the other board members have to say about it. I mean, I did kind of look at 19, I think it's 19 Reed, it's a new home, it's wood, but the proportions and the massing of that building on the street frontage are not all that different from what's being requested here. And so this is a higher style than 19, but I think that this, you know, I don't want to discourage somebody from having the best house on the street. It just needs to fit into the context of the neighborhood.
Yeah, this is Bill. I would say I agree, Glenn, with that assessment. I think there are positives, obviously, that have been made here. I do believe the presentation of the facade full width is definitely a positive direction, and then applaud the applicant for getting the parking scenario figured out to the rear of the building. So I agree really, Glenn, with your assessment that there are positives here, and I think there are things that are workable here, but I think it's down to the detailing. So I believe I would go right along with line what you just said.
Yeah, I agree with Glenn as well. I understand the need to fit into the context of the neighborhood, but I like the detailing on this, and I think that maybe with some tweaking, some of Glenn's comments, that you could keep those elements and that high style that you have here, while maybe toning it down so that it fits the context, but not getting rid of those elements entirely. So I concur with Glenn's comments.
Not to be too much of an outlier, I do not disagree with the statements, most of the statements of my fellow board members. I do not disapprove of the general direction or design of the house. It does, I think it's appropriate. I'm still a little up in the air about the overall height, but I haven't. I don't think it's far off. I do agree with Glenn and Bill that I think most of what's going on is detailing. I do think there's some dimensional issues that need to be considered, particularly in the elevation, as I mentioned before, the way the back of the house intersects, the addition intersects with the roof of the main house and overlaps the porch of the main house. I think, but again, the general design of the house, I do not have an issue with.
Yeah,
Well, sorry, Lindsay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that Fillmore said this, but I think that the design of that addition is an improvement from the prior submittal. I guess moving that chimney just, it is an improvement here. So Glenn, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm a little pulled with how to word a motion. I mean, so we are at conceptual level, which conceptual is height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction. I am relatively comfortable with the height, the scale, and the mass. I think it is more the architectural detailing that I believe we've all commented on a refinement of, if that's a fair statement.
I think that's right, Glenn.
I think that's pretty fair, Glenn.
So I'm gonna throw something out there, but it doesn't have to be a motion until everyone hears it and tells me if they think it's an appropriate motion. I would make a motion for conceptual approval of height, scale, and mass with restudy of architectural detailing for better neighborhood context. And then any other board comments that so that's why that might not be a full motion. We've all made some other comments, but is that reasonable?
I certainly agree with that motion. Do we have any other board comments to incorporate?
Glenn, did you want to incorporate any of staff's comments, or?
You know, I don't know that I can. I'm reading staff comments on my phone, so let me flip back over, Fillmore. Sorry to hold things up.
Real quick, while you're doing that, Glenn, I just have a question of staff. Obviously, all the parts of conceptual approval, height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction. Is there an inherent understanding that general architectural direction is approved if the conceptual approval is given, or can that be worded into the motion that should be a portion of restudy? I just want to make sure that conceptual approval does not imply that all of those particular points are approved, because I agree with Glenn, height, scale, and mass, I'm pretty close to there. I do believe that some of the staff's comments regarding the dormers and some of the other things are warranted a look. It's really the general architectural direction that I think is sort of holding me back. So I just wanted to make sure procedurally what that means.
So from what I understand, conceptual approval has moved away from height, scale, and mass, and now is referred to as general architectural direction. I don't know if Linda or Tori have a comment on that. But
Yeah, I think I'd like to know a clarification of that, because procedurally, I just want to make sure that the right thing is being, said.
Echo what Kim said. That's my understanding, is that it's height, scale, massing, and general architecture direction, but I'm looking it up.
And I guess, is it okay for us to define what conceptual approval is in this motion?
And I believe if the summary does include general architectural direction as a condition of approval, conceptual approval, then potentially
I found it.
maybe referral of sorts. Go ahead, Tori. I'm sorry.
So BARS conceptual review definition: review of the height, scale, mass, and three-dimensional form of a building or an addition to an existing building, and the general architectural direction and quality of the project as it relates to its site, its neighborhood, and the city. This phase defines the overall quality and architectural character of the project.
Okay, so it's really both. And I guess then the holdup, and Glenn, I don't want to speak for you, but I believe I heard similar, and I feel the same way. as the height, scale, and mass are very workable. I think it's the general architectural direction that's holding me back. And that in that instance, I don't think necessarily an approval, conceptual approval would be here, potentially a deferral. Or a staff motion to denial, but
Yeah, I
whichever.
mean, I hear that, Bill. I mean, I think I don't think there's a lot of difference between, let's say, a conceptual approval for height, scale, mass, and restudy or further study of architectural direction in detail versus a deferral for architectural direction and detailing, but approval of height, scale, and mass. It just needs to be a clean motion for them to move forward.
Right. Well, I guess what I'm saying, Glenn, is what I'm inherently hearing in this is that conceptual approval is all of those things.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless I'm wrong, if somebody can clarify, please.
If I could maybe make a suggestion, if it is truly both of those and we couldn't truly give conceptual approval of, so it'd be like a half conceptual approval, which I'm not certain that that's a thing. Perhaps if we did choose to defer to go through each of the staff comments and only adopt those that are in line with sort of what we've been talking about. Just for example, staff comment 2 that talks about the height, perhaps that's one that we don't incorporate into a motion to defer to review staff comments. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what you seem to be saying, Lindsay, is that it would be a deferral, but then we could pick particular points where we find some degree of conformance, be that height, scale, and mass. But in deferring, we're not giving an overall conceptual approval, which I think is probably appropriate to what I'm hearing. What's read.
Right.
I think that's fair, Bill.
By striking some of the staff comments, we're giving the applicant some comfort that, okay, you're good on height, scale, and mass, so we'll strike those comments, but we're deferring it for you to address the remaining staff comments and any board comments.
I think that this project probably I would be in agreement with Bill that the way to go might be deferral. I think that it's close enough, or that the changes made are that need to be made, or maybe are not quite substantial enough for a denial. But I'm not sure. But I don't think that I think conceptual approval maybe sends the wrong message. And I do think in deferral, we certainly need to go through staff's comments and decide what is appropriate and what is not.
Probably backing up, I had made that comment about the deferral, but I'm okay with the architectural direction, and I think what needs to be restudied is the detailing, what Glenn was discussing. So I might be outnumbered here, but
Yeah, I think maybe I don't quite concur with that, just by the fact that I believe part of the commentary had to do with the sort of high style nature of the building. And that's just the overall detailing, sort of cumulative, if you will. And I do agree with that comment. So I believe I might have a little bit of deference to that point, Lindsay.
Yeah, I think it really is just how far you think of general architectural direction and actual detailing overlapping, truthfully, not to be technical about it. But if they had presented us with a more vanilla box for a conceptual review without detailed handrails and coins and things like that, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion right now. granted, it's good to be able to give the feedback now so that they know where to head, if that's a fair way to think about it.
So we don't get stuck at preliminary.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to me, it is all about the architectural detailing, which I am in my mind defining a little differently from architectural direction. But I may be wrong in the way I'm seeing that. I do think though that if we're not checking all those boxes, Bill, I do think that you're probably right on a deferral is more appropriate, but they do need clear feedback. And the staff comments that I had put a note by or that I had put a little check by were number 2, pay attention to the floor to floor height to see if any more height could come out of it. Number 3, to adjust the fenestration as needed. Number 7, to verify the compatibility of the dormers. Number 8, I fully agree that either the entire foundation or base should be brick or none. I don't think only the front base should be brick. Those are the ones that I had made a note by.
Those are the ones you would incorporate, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right, Lindsay.
Okay. Fillmore and Bill did, after reviewing the staff comments.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Fillmore.
I would, I am mostly in agreement with Glenn. I would, and maybe if we're not gonna, I say we don't have to include 4, which Glenn left out, but we should maybe have a board comment to restudy the coins on the front, and maybe, reduce their impact. I do think that I still contend that the rear addition needs to get off the roof of the main house. And so we might, I think that, I think how the number 9, I'm okay with leaving that off because that is a pretty minor detail that could be dealt with at a different stage of approval. But I think it is important how the stucco meets the brick. That popped into my head as soon as I looked at the elevation. That little detail there needs to be carefully thought out, but that is quite, sort of into the detailing. So I'm okay leaving that off at this level. And the treatment of the louvered panel on the front elevation, again, that could be addressed at a different level. And so I'm okay with leaving those off. But I think that that the impact of the rear addition on the east side of the house does need to be addressed.
Okay, I'm not going to make a motion. I'm one of you guys who are keeping better track of this. I was just wanting to throw in a couple of points. I agree with Glenn's assessment of which staff comments are applicable. I agree, Fillmore, with your supplemental comments. I think to your point about the coins, I believe you have to be very careful about the return of those coins into this facade wall, especially as we're seeing this elevation right here. There's not a lot of depth to that wall in return at the piazza. And the coins usually wrap a corner equally front to side. So that could be a problematic detailing issue right there. So I agree with your assessment as well, Fillmore. If one of you guys could kind of put that together, because I'm not going to be able to do it, I would appreciate that. But I do agree with Glenn, your assessment of the staff comments, items, and Fillmore, your supplementals.
Bill, are you making a motion?
I just said I'm not. Thank you.
Do you want to try, Glenn, or do you?
Fillmore, I didn't write down. I had written down my own comment about the coins, so that's why I didn't have number 4. But I did not write down the other things that you
The
said.
only other one that I had was besides board comment about the coins, which you certainly I'm sure we can use your comment, was that the impact of the rear addition on the gable end of the main house needs to be restudied. I think there are probably a lot of ingenious ways to make that look better, but I think it needs not to have the visual impact on
Okay.
the main house roof that it currently has. And
One more quick thing, not to muddy the water here, but I think that other comment that was made, I believe, by Historic Charleston, here we're looking at that east facade with a lot of blank wall in the lower portions. I think that should be addressed as well.
I agree.
Okay, I'm going to do my best. Feel free to guide me if anybody needs to. I'm going to make a motion for deferral for architectural detailing period, with board comments to eliminate ground level coins, and address the lower east wall of the rear portion of the building where the wall is empty. Another board comment to restudy the impact of the rear addition at the end of the main house roof and porch, and adopt board comments to pay attention to floor heights. 3, adjust fenestration as needed. 7, verify the compatibility of the dormers as drawn. And 8, brick should only be used on the foundation if used everywhere on the foundation, otherwise eliminate the separate brick material.
Okay. So we have a motion for deferral for architectural detailing, board comment to eliminate the ground level coins, another board comment to address the lower east wall of the rear portion of the building, and a third board comment to restudy the impact of that rear addition at the end of the main house, rear and porch, and then staff comments 2, 3, 7, and 8 with Glenn's clarification. Do we have a second?
I'm not in the muddy water. There's just one additional comment that I think still warrants to be added. Is to restudy the return of the coins at the piazza screen wall.
So Lindsay, may I add one more board comment to my motion? So that we don't.
Kim, did you get that other board comment from Bill?
Restudy the return of coins at the piazza screen wall.
Yes, and so that's a fourth board comment and a fifth board comment from Glenn.
No, sorry. I wanted to adopt Bill's comment into my motion. That's all.
Oh.
Because I can't say all that.
Kim, do you have all that?
I do. Should I repeat it?
Yes, just for the sake of clarity.
Glenn, just to clarify, your motion is for deferral for architectural detailing or architectural direction?
Architectural detailing.
Okay, deferral for architectural detailing with board comments to eliminate ground level coins, address lower east wall of the rear portion of the building, restudy impact of rear addition at edge of the house and rear porch, restudy return of coins at the piazza screen wall, and staff comments 2, 3, 7, and 8. Did I miss anything?
You got it.
Do we have a second?
This is Bill, I'll second.
I will now put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor?
Bill,
Yay in favor.
chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Moving on, agenda item number 6, 42 Charlotte has been withdrawn by the applicant. Agenda item number 7, 164 Smith Street. Kim, if you'll give us an introduction.
I certainly will. 164 Smith Street is requesting conceptual approval for the replacement of the stucco exterior envelope with cementitious siding. The building's not rated in Radcliffe Borough neighborhood, built circa 2007 in the Old City District. Again, we have a flyby for your familiarity. Here's the house right here, almost at the corner of Smith and Morris. And I'll just drop in here. So this is looking west, excuse me, north on Smith. Here's the house. And south on Smith. Turn around the corner. I don't think that this little street, no, it has not been photographed. So the applicant wants to take it from here. We have Mr. David Rand. We have another applicant perhaps speaking for 164 Smith Street. We do. Mr. Sean Mellon. Oh. Are you there? I think you're muted.
Sean, you're muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, I'm sorry. My name is David Rand, and I'm with Glick Bain Architects. And I appreciate your time tonight, but we've been called in to make repairs on 164 Smith Street. And I think the scope is pretty basic, and I should be able to go through these slides quite quickly. The bottom line, we were called in for repairs because of extensive water damage, primarily caused by stucco applied to wood framing. Here you see the planned unit development of Morris Square, and it's very close to Ashley Hall. Next slide, please. Here's our site plan. As you can see here, very tight quarters between Marbell and Smith Street and Morris on the north. Next slide, please. As you pointed out, here is the west elevation on Smith Street. The ground level where the front door is CMU with stucco applied to the CMU, and the first, second, and third levels are stucco applied to wood framing. There's no real damage to the ground level where the garage and the front door is, but extensive damage on levels 1, 2, and 3. That's why we're proposing to go back with cementitious lap siding and trim only on the first, second, and third, and keeping the stucco on the ground level. Next slide, please. Here's the rear of the unit facing Marbell Lane. Next slide. Here we have our floor plans. Once again, on the right-hand side of this slide is the ground level. We're proposing no change other than prepping and painting the existing stucco. To the left is the first floor, one story up. And from that level on up to the third level, we're proposing removing the stucco and replacing with a cementitious lap siding. We're going to use the artisan style and attempt to capture the aesthetic of traditional wood siding and with the deep shadow lines. Next slide, please. This is just the second and third floor levels. We're not doing any real interior work other than refreshing the bathrooms, but nothing that will affect the exterior work on this particular unit. Next slide. The same with the roof. We're going to keep the standing seam metal roof as is. Next slide, please. Here you have existing on the left and proposed on the right. Next slide. The south elevation, same thing. Next slide, please. The rear elevation. And finally, next slide, please. The north elevation, which is butts up against an adjacent unit. That's why there's no real detailing on this particular elevation. Next slide. As far as context, on the upper left-hand corner, we're looking across the street from the front door on Smith Street. On the right-hand side, we're looking back at the unit, sandwiched between two other units. On the lower left-hand corner is the back side on Marbell Lane. And on the right side, lower right-hand side, is across the street from the rear of the unit on Marbell Lane. Next slide, please. Here you see the unit as it relates in mass, height, and scale to the other units surrounding it. And that's all I have for you all tonight, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rand. And are there any board questions?
This is Bill. I just have one question. At the second floor level, is that a banding detail? And are you changing plane in the wall? It appears that way on the elevations. Is that just a graphic anomaly, or is there some intent there?
No, it's graphic, I think.
Okay, thank you.
It should be in the same plane. And as was mentioned earlier, I found out that the Hardy Artisan is being discontinued 24 March. So we're proposing to go back with Nichiha and their artisan siding. Of course, I apologize, they call it Savannah Smooth, but it's very similar to the Hardy Artisan. And that's all I have. Thank you.
May I ask, just to clarify for the board's future knowledge, what is the existing stucco application? You know, we struggle with approving stucco on some projects, and just so that we know what is causing a problem here.
Well, you all may be able to address this better than I, but as I understand it, with stucco on wood, the wood moves differently than the actual stucco, so cracking occurs despite even the best intentions of control joints. And we just have extensive water damage throughout the first, second, and third levels. None on the ground floor where the stucco is attached to the CMU. If that helps.
Thank you.
In the interest of education, when does stucco work? What applications? So not wood, when would stucco work?
Stucco on masonry.
If you're doing a wood frame, really the best solution if you want to stucco it is to brick veneer it and then stucco it. And you can do stucco on wood frame with, I mean, I generally don't like it, period, but you can do it in a way that is much better than what is generally executed. There's some fairly sophisticated systems that use fluid applied and drainage mats and ventilation. The biggest issue with these, besides cracking, of course, is simply that the stucco is generally applied, tight to the sheathing without any air gap, and so you don't have any way for the condensation that's bound to accumulate behind it to escape. There's no drainage mat. There's no ventilation to allow airflow behind the stucco. And so it condensates, and then of course pretty quickly that condensation works its way into the frame and starts to rot the structure out. And it is so widespread and typical, it is stunning. And it's just done again and again and again and again. Yeah, like Bill said, if you want to stucco it, put it on masonry.
Thank you, Fillmore. Do we have any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim, I am seeing one letter from the Preservation Society, which I will read. 164 Smith Street, dear board members, we have seen a number of similar requests come forward recently and generally have not objected based on date of construction. We understand the challenges with these materials and are sympathetic to the request. However, we are struggling with this particular proposal. The entire design for this building is predicated on it being a masonry structure, and it doesn't seem to translate well to the material palette of a frame building, particularly within the gable parapet. We would encourage further study of exterior material solutions, as we strongly feel the current cementitious siding proposal is not compatible with the building. Thank you for considering our position in this matter. Sincerely, Erin Minigan, Director of Historic Preservation. Kim, do we have anyone speaking? Thank you. Kim, you're on mute, but I can read lips.
Thanks.
Let's move on to city staff comments and recommendations.
We just had a couple comments. The material change requires a restudy of some of the stylistic detailing that makes this house unique to the development. The best option would, of course, be to employ one of the newer stucco products that eliminates the issues of stucco over frame. If that's not an option, the parapet walls should not be clad in siding. Eliminate the parapets and redesign the detailing of the roof lines while retaining some differentiation among the neighboring houses. Staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Rand, did you have did you want to clarify anything or respond to anything you heard from the Preservation Society or city staff?
Let me take a second and read through these real quick. Some of the style detailing, I'm not sure how to approach that. Is there something specific there?
Yeah, so let's take a look. We don't feel that, cladding these parapets in siding would make for the best details. So if you are in fact going to go with the cementitious siding, we would ask that this roof line be restudied and detailed to eliminate these little parapet walls. which would, make you need to detail this roof line out. But at the same time, we wouldn't want to lose the uniqueness that it has in the neighborhood. So all these houses might start to look the same after all the stucco's been approved to go away. And we just want to retain a little bit of that uniqueness in this house. So hopefully there can be a nice redesign of that roof line.
So it's the parapet walls on this particular unit that you have trouble with if you remove the stucco and go with the siding.
Right, and then see if you have a good picture. So you've got this large overhang of the roof, and then when you put siding on it, it's going to compete. So the front of this house with the no overhang is going to compete a little bit with this edge of the house that has this large overhang. You're just going to have to look at those details and figure out a good solution. That's where we're going with that.
May I add a comment, or is that fair right now?
Please, Bill.
I would think that potentially it could be detailed. I think it would just need to appear to have more of a capped type detail on the parapet, be that a trim return, everything like that. There's just a very minor degree of detailing proposed. If it had more of an entire sort of fascia system and return across the top, I believe it could work. I think it's just a matter of how the trim at the top of the parapet and then the little ears or returns of the parapet is set to have more visual weight, more trim weight at the top, and then have the field of siding work down below that. I believe it could work. So I think the point would be made, the detailing at the parapet wall, I think to your point, Kim, and then the trim thereof.
So are we envisioning, and I'm not asking you to design it, but are we envisioning it to look something like the one to the left of it then?
Isn't it?
The upper right-hand corner of that slide.
To some degree, that's what I was saying. Some degree, like a cornice detail with a proper freeze board, some degree of depth of detailing that is what I was saying, not necessarily what staff was saying or anybody else, but that is what I was trying to imply. Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Rand, did you have any other, anything else you wanted clarified or?
If I could see those comments real quickly and we'll move on. I'm sorry. Okay, I think I have enough to go on. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rand. Let's move to board discussion and a vote.
Well, this is Bill again. I think it's pretty much all been said. I do agree with staff's comments that obviously a newer, more adequate stucco system could be applicable. Or again, if siding is used, that the detailing of the parapets need to be refined and to our discussion. And I could support either one, and I could definitely see an owner of this unit not wanting to entertain stucco again, probably never again, unless they have a masonry house.
I agree with Bill in his observation. There are systems that could much improve the stucco application of this building. Stowe makes one. I mean, there are several of them out there. They are expensive, and it would invariably change the reveals. And so it would probably require, at the very least, retrimming the windows, maybe even replacing the windows. So I think that could be studied, but it is a much more, I think, complex option than residing, even though
I think I just have to say that I find it frustrating and disappointing because these buildings were approved with variety. If this were an older building, we wouldn't be discussing removing stucco and putting on some kind of fake faux wood, hardy, whatever siding. So that's why I'm frustrated over it. I know the applicant's doing what they can and it's a building issue, but you know, it's everything that's been built in the past 20 years that's been tried to be done cheaply, and it's unfortunate and disappointing. So I don't think I'm in favor.
To Glenn's, to Glenn's point, this is happening to a lot of these structures that have been built in the last 20 or 25 or even 30 years, but definitely in the last 20 years, where there was some variation in the designs and the texture of these developments, and they're all becoming hardy plank, which I agree with that. It's very disappointing. I support Glenn's frustration.
I agree. I support the frustration, but I would also anticipate the owner's level of frustration with the system in place. And it's something I believe as a board we can be more studious about in the future. Obviously, we can't demonize products that don't have a track record, but I can only tell you for myself, I've never specified stucco on frame for this exact reason. I guess I just saw the trouble coming. But I guess I would say then I'm prepared to make a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff, with staff's comments and a board comment that it should the stucco be replaced with a siding material, that refinement of the parapet and parapet return detail be incorporated into the design, and a final review by staff.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments and additional board comment that if stucco is not an option. Did staff comment 3 not address your comment?
It did. I think the applicant needed clarification of what exactly that meant in addressing the parapet wall. So I just sort of added that board comment to just sort of elaborate on that. That's why I did it.
Okay.
Refinement of parapet and parapet return detail should be incorporated into the design and final review by staff. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes, thank you, Ken.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I think I'm the only one available to second this motion. And I'll be honest with you, I'm reluctant to do it simply because, I might very reluctantly support this because of my my concern that there is now a homeowner that with their house deteriorating because of this system, and it needs to be addressed. And I think that denying this probably puts an undue burden on the homeowner, but I'm reluctant to go on record seconding a motion for something I really think is not the best answer. But I don't see, it's simple. I think we either approve this with staff comments or we deny it. And so I will second the motion.
Okay, I will put it to a vote. Glenn,
Nay opposed.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
chair votes in favor and the motion passes. The last item on the agenda is agenda item number 8, 225 King Street, and it has been withdrawn for staff review. And that is all the items on the agenda this evening. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Motion,
moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye.